Welcome to Reach, your platform to connect with other executive assistants and acquire game-changing knowledge and perspective. Reach is designed to inspire your workday, guide you through pivotal moments in your career, and transform you into the executive assistant you've always wanted to be. So happy to have you on our program today. Thank you so much for joining us. It is a true honor. And for those that are just joining us, we opened up this conversation with a brief meditation that Libby led us through. And I have to say, Libby, that has never happened before. That is a definite first on this podcast, and I am fully here for it. So I think if anything, this is indicative of the tone of today's conversation and also just who you are and what you bring to not just the roles that you take and the choices and the decisions that you make, but also how you lead your own coaching practice and how you partner with the clients that you work with. And I think that's just really indicative of how you show up. So I wanted to share with everybody that that's how we started our conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, I felt that it was important, and I do that before every coaching call as well. And thank you so much for inviting me on to this podcast. I've been super excited, and I'm very, very, very happy to be here with you.
Thank you. So for those who don't know, Libby Moore is our phenomenal guest today. And among her many claims to fame, one probably most recognizable claim to fame of Libby's is that she spent over a decade supporting none other than the legendary Oprah Winfrey as both her executive assistant and her chief of staff. And Libby's noteworthy career has been featured in publications like Forbes, 40 Over 40, Smart Company. Prior to working with Oprah, you spent several years working for Jan Werner, a media mogul, co-founder of Rolling Stone magazine. You also worked for talk show personality Maury Povich, who I certainly grew up watching in the lunchroom break room of my mother's office. Actually, I also grew up watching Oprah in the break room. That was kind of our tradition. I would take the bus to downtown San Francisco after school, and we couldn't afford daycare or whatever would have been the thing, like the after school program. So my after school program was hanging out in the lunchroom of the Bank of America building while my mom finished up work. And I would consider Oprah one of my strongest mentors all through my adolescence. I hung out with Oprah every single day after school and a bag of Frito-Lays.
I love that. That makes me so happy.
Such an incredible career that you've led. We'll be talking about that. We'll be talking also about your transition into what you do now, which is serving as an executive life coach. And we'll also be linking to libbymore.com for our listeners, so you can check out all of the wealth of information and resources that Libby has available there, as well as ways of connecting with Libby. Once again, it's just such an honor and treat to have you. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you, Jessica. I'm happy to be here.
So let's just get the burning question out of the way. And I know you've shared this story, but if you wouldn't mind just kind of giving us a synopsis of how you ended up landing the role supporting Oprah.
Yes. Well, the short version, and you'll love this because I got it through a recruiter. So
I do love that.
Yeah, right. I mean, right on. Thank God for that recruiter. Her name was Helen Fronteras from Chicago. She has since passed away. God bless her heart. She was such a good person. And she was very similar to you and your ethos for Maven, which is, I love that you all, it's all about like eye contact and a handshake and really connecting with people and hearts. And that's exactly how she was. And Harpo Productions hired her to find a chief of staff executive assistant for Oprah. So the short version is Helen, the recruiter in Chicago, reached out to an executive assistant in New York That person was not interested because she had been with Brian Gumbel for 10 years and loved her job and loved living in New York City. But she said, hey, I'm in this networking group called NYCA, New York Celebrity Assistants, meaning 100 assistants to high profile people in New York. She said, I'm in this networking group. I'll send the job description to them and see if anyone's interested. And when it came through, it didn't mention Oprah's name. It just said, hey guys, I was have been in touch with a recruiter in Chicago. She's looking for a chief of staff executive assistant to a high profile person in Chicago. Responsibilities include, and it had this long list of responsibilities. Now, when I read that, so here's the nitty gritty like backstory on that. So that's how I got it, through a recruiter in Chicago. But what I like sharing is the backstory. And 5 weeks prior to me seeing that email, I was just, I had moved to New York because I wanted to write for Saturday Night Live. That never worked out. So then I was applying for like Rosie O'Donnell, trying to be a writer for her. That wasn't working out. So 8.5 years into this dream, I'm working at Rolling Stone as a second assistant. I'm taking the subway to work. And I said this prayer, this intention on the subway. And I said, okay, God, universe, whatever you call it. Clearly you don't want me to write comedy. So whatever you want me to do, every atom, cell, and molecule is open to it. Every atom, cell, and molecule in my body, mind, soul, and spirit is open to it. Show me what it is, be clear, and I will do it, and shine a big fat spotlight on it. So I'm very clear that that's what I'm meant to do. And that was 5 weeks prior to this email coming in. So when I got the email, I read the job description, and it said responsibilities include coordinating private plane pilots, aviation team, coordinating hair and makeup team. And I thought, oh my God, that is Oprah Winfrey, because Jenny Jones and Jerry Springer cannot afford a private plane. And I swear to you, Jessica, I knew like a lightning bolt in that moment that this is what came through my mind. That's why you didn't get Saturday Night Live or Rosie, because you were meant to do this. And I thought, I'm going to send my resume. I'm going to get that job. And I sent the resume, and I had many, many interviews, and ultimately got that job. 6 months prior to me getting that job, my mom said, so again, 6 months prior to that, my mom said, Lib, why don't you send your resume to Oprah? You love her show. You love her magazine. The Rosie people aren't responding. The Saturday Night Live people, like, that's not working out. Why don't you just send your resume to Oprah? And my response was, Mom, whoever is Oprah's assistant, why would they ever leave that job? Number one. And number two, I live in New York. My girlfriend's here. I love my apartment. I live in the West Village. I just blew it off. But that was the universe speaking through my mother to tell me to send my resume. Because ultimately, Jessica, when I did get the job, I asked the team that was there the first week I got there, what happened to the person that was here before me? And they said she left. And I said, when did that happen? And they said 6 months ago. It was literally when my mother said, why don't you send your resume? Yeah.
Wow. So your mother was really
On point.
Yeah, she was definitely a conduit in that moment.
Yes.
Wow, interesting.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, at some point you left, right? And I think like when you said, why would that role even be open? No one would ever leave that role. And
Yeah.
I mean, certainly working there well over a decade in support of Oprah is a massive feat.
Yeah.
But at some point, you also made the decision to leave.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, I mean, it seems like you're someone who really allows herself to be led by really like channeling what the universe has in store for you and being really present and really attuned to that. Was there a moment that told you that it was time for you to see what else was out there for you?
Yes. So I remember, one, in that specific role, backing up a little, there are 3 people. There are many assistants, like a handful of assistants in the 25 years that show was on air. Beverly was her very first assistant. I believe Beverly was there for 10 years. And then I was there for 11, and then the person in between was there for 4. And then there were other assistants on the team, obviously. Beverly started out, she was the only one. And then as Oprah, grew and her life snowballed, it was just like, wow, how did she ever do it? And then she slowly, Beverly had other assistants on the team. And I think when I left, there were 5 assistants on the team that I was managing. So, and let me just be very clear. The reason why I was able to do that role for 11 years is because of the team. Together as a team, we were a team. I would not have lasted for 6 months without those incredible people on that team. It was for sure a team effort, number one.
In the same way that there was a
Yes.
sign that told you, apply to this job, pick up your life, move from New York, go to Chicago, buy a winter coat, put on a
Yes,
parka,
right. Yeah.
suck it up, like
Yes.
your life is here now. Was there a similar moment that told you, and now you have a new calling?
Yes. Okay. 2 things happened. Number one, when I first got the job, within 2 years, let's see, 2000, I got it December 4th, 2000 was my first day on the job, 21, 2. So 2 years later, we were going to South Africa for Christmas kindness. And I was out of my mind excited. I'd never been, I hadn't even traveled that much. I was going to South Africa. And then, after that visit, she had told Nelson Mandela she was going to build a school in South Africa for girls. So ultimately, short version, we went to South Africa 24 times in 8 years when she was building the school.
Wow.
And I remember the first, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, every trip I was like, wow, this is amazing. I can't believe I'm going to South Africa with Oprah and she's building this school there. And just all of it was so exciting. And I remember once thinking, this passed through my mind, if ever I am not excited to go to South Africa or on any trip for that matter, then it is time for me to pass the torch and allow someone to sit in this seat, which is so phenomenal and is such a privilege to sit in this seat, in this chair, in this role. It is time for me to pass the torch. And I do not want to waste any time, because you cannot be in this chair, in this role, and not be so respectful and excited about it. And I remember at a certain point, maybe 2 years before I left, I was like, oh, I hope the trip gets canceled of wherever we are going. And I remember thinking, oh my God.
That's a sign.
Pay attention to that, because that you do not want to be in this chair and have that kind of feeling. And I thought, oh, I'm getting tired, That was number one. Number two, when she announced that she was ending the show, she gave all the employees a 2-year announcement. She pulled together 800 people who worked for the show, pulled everybody together and said, I want you to hear it first. When the contract is up in 2 years, I am not renewing. It'll be 25 years. That is the time to end the Oprah Winfrey Show. And so once a couple months had passed, I said, I want you to know where I am. I'm going to be with you when you transition from the show into the new network, launching the Oprah Winfrey Network. When you transition, moving from Chicago out to California, it's going to be a massive transition for you. And I am here with you all through that. Once you feel settled in your new life, it is time for me to move on from this job, because I'm fried. It'll be 11 years. I've been through 3 relationships since I've been in the job. I never see my family and friends. And I can feel in my gut and my intuition, it'll be time to move on from this role. I'm burnt. Yeah. And I want you to have the best person in this seat. And my hope is that I stay in your Oprah universe in some capacity. But if we can't agree on what that role is, then that is just the universe saying, okay, Libby, you need to go out and take all this experience and share it in another form. And she said, okay, well, we've got 2 years. Let's figure out what it is, what that new role can be.
Yeah.
So that's how I knew when it was time to move on. And then the short version of what really, really, really made me move on. And she was very generous about what I could do in the new network. And I said yes to that. And then in all honesty, once I moved to LA, literally it happened right before I moved to LA, but I still did it. Because I was working with the team that launched Super Soul Sunday on our network, and the leadership changed. And because I was now not reporting to Oprah directly, but reporting to this new leadership team at the network, I was like, there's my sign. I'd been praying for a sign and asking for a sign, and the signs would come. And I was like, ooh, I don't like that. Send me another one. And it would be worse. Oh, send me another one. That's horrible. And it would be worse than the last two. And I got this certain sign at one point. It was like, oh yeah, I got to go. And so I ultimately left January 1st, 2012, having nothing to do with Oprah or the show or the network.
Yeah.
It just, my gut was like, oh, this train's going in a different direction. And I, Libby, am not in alignment with that. So I have to move on to be true to my heart.
I mean, it seems like, and obviously, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you have always been, I mean, even prior to Oprah, you have been a spiritual person. And I'm curious how working with Oprah, because obviously Oprah was going through a major transformation, spiritual transformation herself during a lot of the time that you guys overlapped. And I mean, she had the most preeminent spiritual leaders, advisors, thought leaders. I mean, Deepak Chopra, right? Marianne
Yeah.
Williamson. I mean, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, I mean, how did working were you already very spiritually attuned, or did working for her and with her further calibrate that for you and further heighten that awareness? Or can you speak to that a little bit and what that evolution was like for you and how it shaped and influenced your own spiritual practice?
I love this question so much, especially because this is a professional podcast. So the fact that
Mhm.
you're asking me that and you really want to hone into that, I love it. I love it. So, number one, I do think that I've always been I mean, I love that quote. We're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. And I forget who said that quote, but it's so good.
Mhm.
Um, and so I've always been very curious about spirituality. I was raised Episcopalian. I don't identify as that now because it's too limiting based on what I believe at this point in my life. But I've always been very curious about spirituality and religion and things like that. And then when I was 21, my aunt gave me a book called Creative Visualization by Shakti Gawain. And that's about how you can create and visualize the future that you want. And then my life just started to open more and more and more. Like you said, Marianne Williamson, I started reading her books. And then at 34, when I got the job with Oprah, I always say Oprah and that experience with her, those 11 years with her, not only number one, her, who she is, her knowledge, her intelligence, her spirituality, her belief system, that being number one, and learning by her and from her. Number two, all those people she had on the show, as you just mentioned, Eckhart Tolle, Marianne Williamson, Deepak, Wayne Dyer. That's my jam. That's what I'm interested in. I was never interested in the celebrities or that kind of stuff at all. It was always this aspect. And so Oprah expanded my world and my heart and my mind so much. And that is where we connected. Even in our interview that we did in New York, the first time we met and had an interview, she recognized something in me and I recognized something in her. And it was a spiritual, energetic connection. 1000%. We saw it, we felt it. And I felt in that interview, it was clenched. Like I felt it. I felt like, oh, I see you. And she saw me. And that
100.
was always our bond. So even now when I'm on a panel or doing a keynote or whatever it is about chief of staff, we had a very, very, very unique connection that was based, I will say, in our energetic and our spiritual connection. And there was a chemistry in that. I don't know how to articulate it, but she expanded my mind and my heart and world in ways that I cannot even articulate in this conversation right now.
Yeah. I mean, I have chills. I have chills hearing you say that, and I also have chills imagining what an unbelievable education and exposure it would have been to be in that realm, learning, absorbing, connecting, exchanging energy with all of the people that you just
Yeah.
mentioned. I mean, it's literally, it's so massive, it's basically incomprehensible.
Yeah.
It's just like I don't even know. And I love the story that you tell when you talk about, this meeting that you alluded to between you and Oprah, when she asked you and she basically says, "So what's your plan? What's your
Oh,
plan for your life?" Right? And I was thinking to myself, I was like, what does Oprah Winfrey ask in an interview? And she's obviously
yeah.
not going to bother with this. So, like, tell me about your greatest weakness.
Hmm.
What's your opportunity for improvement? She's going to go right to the heart of the matter. And I love that she went for it. And what I love even more is that you answered in kind and you didn't, so maybe you can share that story, but I love that there was a risk for that, right? There was a risk in that moment.
Yeah.
And you just like, I'm going to leave it all on the mat. Let's go. So maybe you can share, maybe you can share how you addressed that question because I thought it was a brilliant moment.
I would love to. Thank you for asking that. So I want to back up a little and say, because I feel this is an important piece of the interview process as people are listening. And of course, they're going to be interviewing for future positions and things like that and interviewing people. So before that interview with Oprah, I had several, I think I did 2 phone interviews with the recruiter. I did 1 phone interview with the president of Harpo and the head of HR on a conference call. And then they said, you sound like a really good candidate. Can you meet Oprah? She's going to be in New York next week. Of course, yes. Okay, so now it's leading up to the interview with Oprah at this very high end hotel in the restaurant of this very high end hotel in New York. And my mom said, leading up to that interview, Elizabeth, if Oprah asks about your personal life, I don't think you should tell her you're gay. And I said, Mom, I completely understand what you're saying because you want me to get this job. I want this job. But if Oprah is not okay having a gay person as her chief of staff, then I am not the right person for this job. I'm not going to go in the closet and pretend like I'm someone that I'm not just to get this job. And I really want this job with her, but I have to be myself. And she said, You're right. You're absolutely right. So there were all these things, these opportunities that came up for me to be myself as I was leading up to this interview. Okay, the day of the interview comes. I get to this hotel early. I find a quiet place in the lobby, and I did my 3 deep breath, slow exhales as we did before this conversation. And I just closed my eyes and did the deep breathing, and I said this little prayer, this intention setting, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. Thank you for this opportunity that I get to meet Oprah Winfrey, who I admire so much. And I'm similar to you, Jessica, had grown up with watching her show. And so I really gave thanks for the opportunity to meet her. And then I said, thank you for helping me to be 100% myself, calm, cool, confident. And I just want to be myself. And if I am meant to get this job, make it very clear to her and to me. And then I just went in and then I just released that intention. So I go in, I'm seated at the table. I'm the first one there. Then Tim Bennett came in, who was the president of Harpo, introduced himself. He said, Hi, Libby, I'm Tim. We spoke last week. Oprah's on the phone with President Clinton. She'll be right down. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. Oprah's on the phone with the president of the United States, and
Yeah,
then she's going to come
casual.
interview.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally casual. Poker face. Like, oh, okay, great. So then Oprah came in 5 minutes later. Everyone's like, oh my God, that's Oprah. That's Oprah. She's, sat down, shook my hand, hello. And the 3 of us start talking. And about 40 minutes into this conversation, she looked at me and said, okay, Libby, so what's your plan? And I said, what do you mean my plan? And she said, your plan for your life. Oh my God, Jessica, in that moment, I thought, I don't have a plan for my life. Like, what do I say? Like, I don't have a plan. And I thought in a nanosecond in my brain, I thought, do I make something up because I'm in an interview with Oprah, or do I tell her the truth? And in that moment, I went with the truth. And I said, well, honestly, 8.5 years ago when I moved to New York, I thought my plan was to be a comedy writer for Saturday Night Live. And I've been trying for, 8.5 years to make that happen. And I had an interview and it didn't happen. So I've been sending writing submissions to the Rosie O'Donnell show, to the head writer, for the past 10 months. And then that wasn't happening. So I said this prayer on the subway 5 weeks ago. Okay, God, clearly you don't want me to have this job with Rosie or Saturday Night Live. So whatever you want me to do, every atom, cell, and molecule in my body, mind, soul, and spirit is open to it. Show me what it is, be clear, and I will do it. And here I am sitting here having a glass of Chardonnay, talking with you. So if you leave this interview and you feel like I'm the right person for the job, then I would be honored to take it because it matches my 7 years of experience as an executive assistant, um, to Jan Wenner in magazine publishing, and my 3 years experience as a personal assistant to Maury Povich in talk TV. It matches all of that experience with what I'm passionate about. And what I am passionate about is what you're doing on your show and in your foundation, helping the betterment of women and girls throughout the world. But if you leave this interview and you feel like, okay, she's nice, but she's not the right one for the job, that's okay, because that just means there's a better chief of staff coming for you. And if this isn't what the universe has planned for me, I cannot wait to see what's next.
Mm-hmm.
And we just held eye contact for like
Mm.
33, it seemed like 30 seconds. And in that moment, we connected. And she looked at Tim and said, okay, Tim, let's bring her to Chicago.
Do you
And
remember her smiling, or do you like, was there something in her face, or was it just this intense kind of eye lock between the two of
intense eye
you?
lock.
Mm.
I mean, there was no smile. I was just being honest. I was speaking from my heart. She had an open heart. Her heart was connecting with my heart. We felt something. And I can only explain it from my end. And I'm closing my eyes right now as I say this. There was an acknowledgement and a knowing and a truth. I feel that she felt like this person is truthful.
Mm-hmm.
And our hearts connected, and I felt it. And she just looked at Tim and said, okay, Tim, let's bring her to Chicago. And he was like, whoa, 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 like, let's slow this down. Cause she's a very, like, she goes with her gut and her instinct and like, boom, acts on it. And he was thinking like, oh my God, we need to vet her. Like, we don't even know who this
Right,
person is. Like, he was
right.
like, let's just slow it down. Libby's never been to Chicago. Let's fly her out, have her meet our folks, see the city. She was like, okay, great. Libby, see you in Chicago. And we got up and she gave me a big hug and shook hands with Tim, and they left because they had to go to the plane and had a show the next day. And oh my God, Jessica, I walked out of that hotel. It was on 57th Street. I lived down in the West Village. And I thought, I just got that job. There was no formal offer, but I knew energetically in my gut, I just got that job. And I thought, I'm going to walk home and I'm going to remember every nook and cranny of this conversation so that I never forget it, because my life is about to change. And it did.
That's such an amazing story.
I still get chills when I
It is,
when
yeah.
I tell it. That was
Yeah.
24 years ago.
Wild.
24 years ago. And I am saying it like, wait, did that happen to me? Like, but the
Mm-hmm.
reason why I like telling that story, Jessica, is because it's about being honest and truthful. Like when my mom said, oh, you shouldn't tell her you're gay just so you can get the job. Like, no, I'm going to be myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that to everyone, whatever your thing is, because even if you really want a job, if you're yourself, your authentic self, and someone's like, well, I don't want that, or I don't want her or him, then there's something better for you waiting right around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the best lessons for me ever. And P.S., that is what created a very strong bond that we still have to this day. She knows that I will tell her the truth no matter what.
Yeah. And I think it's a really important story to tell because I do think that a lot of people, especially our listeners, struggle with how transparent should I be? Is there such a thing as too transparent? Is there such a thing as too forthcoming? And I think that there's also a difference between being truth-telling and being realistic. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I think people say things that maybe aren't realistic for the job and they're speaking their truth, but it's also maybe not a very realistic hope or desire, right? Like there's certain things that would prevent that from happening, whether it's just sort of practical things. But I think that the idea of speaking your truth in terms of assessing whether a role or an executive is right for you. I mean, I think this is one of the most powerful stories and examples we've ever heard of someone being radically truthful and taking a real chance, right? I mean, she could have interpreted that as like, God, like, is this woman really serious about being in?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she wanted to be a comedy writer up until a few weeks ago. Like, I don't know, is she really gonna, is this her in her heart of hearts? But you were 100% authentic. And I think that the way that she validated you and the way that she really heard you, I think is an incredibly encouraging story for others to hear when they're thinking about how to share themselves with a stranger and how much or how little of themselves to truthfully and authentically express.
Absolutely. And I do not think that would be the right, what's the word? The right way of handling all
Mhm.
interviews.
Sure.
Because have you interviewed Anne Hyatt, who worked with Eric
Yes.
Schmidt? And
Yes,
yeah, I
actually, earlier
love
this
Anne.
year. I love her
Okay.
too.
She's amazing. She's one of my closest, dearest friends. I love Anne. In an interview with Eric Schmidt, I would not have said that. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? But
Mhm.
also, I am not the right person for Eric Schmidt.
Eric
Do you know
Schmidt.
what I'm
Right.
saying? Yeah.
Yep.
With Oprah, it was like, oh, yeah, like I see you, I feel you, I get you. I feel so fortunate that that opportunity came into my life. And that goes into a whole nother conversation of outside of just like what's on LinkedIn, what is your, you know what I mean? There's an
Mhm.
energetic force field of energy, of opportunity that's happening that most people are not talking about. So I like to say I had to release my dream job of writing comedy for Saturday Night Live and or Rosie in order to get my dream job. So my ego was like, I'm going to be a comedy writer in
Mhm.
New York City. I tried for 8.5 years. I even, after leaving Mari for 2 years, did odd jobs while I took stand-up comedy. I was in a sketch comedy group. I did improv for 2 years, doing random odd jobs after the Maury Povich show to try to get into comedy. And then the Rolling Stone job came along and I did that for 4 years. But I was still like, man, I actually, when I was at the end of Rolling Stone, I was like, I hate being an assistant. I really don't want to do this. But when I released the comedy thing, like, okay, show me what to do, it was interesting because the Oprah opportunity came as the chief of staff, executive assistant, and I was able to delegate all of the stuff that I was not good at, honestly, and could connect with her and be her key liaison.
Mhm.
So it was a very different, unique opportunity.
Yeah, totally. And that's I think that's also a very important point is that, these jobs really are like snowflakes. And that,
Yeah.
I've heard that expression. That's not me that coined it, but I think it really is appropriate when you think about there's a very, very special bespoke, unique flavor, of EA and chief of staff roles, partnership roles, support roles, right?
Yes.
They take
Yes.
on this sort of life of their own, but it's this relationship and this entanglement and this intertwined, intricate sort of thing that happens between individuals and their staff and whatever. And they are different. And you're right, it wouldn't have been the move for Eric Schmidt.
Yeah. Right.
Um,
Exactly. Not at all.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's great. And so I'm curious, I mean, you've talked about how you allow for your own spiritual practice to enter into your decision making and your life and your professional decision making as well. How did you see that happen in terms of Oprah, in terms of how she makes decisions, in terms of how she allowed her spiritual awareness to impact her decision making and her leadership style? I mean, was there a place for that within how she ran her professional world? And I'm curious how she might have expressed that.
100%. So one, she's very tapped into her intuition, her gut instinct, that inner GPS system, whatever you want to call it, higher consciousness, inner wisdom, intuition, whatever you want to call it, all the same thing. She's very, very, very tapped into that and leads her personal and professional life from that place. In addition, she surrounds herself with people that are as smart or smarter than her in the area of which she's hiring them for. And she has a whole inner circle of, I would say, people that she's very close with, advisors and or spiritual advisors or business advisors that she talks with to get her input. And she takes all of that information and goes within and says, okay, what feels right for me based on this information? So absolutely, she leads her life through her intuition. I also remember early on when I was there and she had a board meeting and I said, I would really like to sit in on your board meetings to understand what's happening in your world. And she said, absolutely, you must sit on the board on the board meetings. And I remember once she was being pressured by the board to make a decision that day. And this person in particular was saying, no, we don't have time. You need to let us know now. And she just very calmly said, I understand that you would like this answer now. I cannot make this answer right now because I'm not sure. I'm going to go home. I'm going to pray on it. And I will come back tomorrow morning and I will tell you what my decision is. And I thought, damn, that's cool. Like, she's very sure of who she is, and she has no problem saying, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go within. I'm going to lean into my spiritual advisor, that higher consciousness, and figure out what is best. What is the best decision? So I thought that was very powerful. I loved it.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I have to imagine that hearing a leader and an executive say, I'm going to pray on this decision is not something you often hear in a board meeting context, right?
That's right.
Those are words that don't usually come into play in how people make decisions. In your own practice now as an executive life coach, what do you see as the place of spirituality in a professional setting or realm, and how do you try to cultivate that practice for your clients, or do you try to encourage them to embrace spirituality in terms of their own professional development?
So when I do coaching with people, I always do an intro call. And in that call, I always ask, what is your belief system? Were you raised with any kind of belief system? Do you believe in a higher power or God, source, universe, energy? There's no right or wrong answer. I am only asking because I want to speak in your natural languaging. And some people say, I believe in God. Some people say, I don't believe in God, but I believe in energy. Or a lot of people say, I believe in the universe. And some people will say, I don't believe in anything. I think it's me and my decisions, and that's it. We die, we're buried in the ground, or we're cremated and we're dust, and that's it. So I've heard all kinds of answers over the past 11 years of my coaching. And whatever that person says, I will write that word down and I will speak to them in that language, in their own natural languaging. Number one, I believe that even people, which is very rare, it's very rare that there's people that say, I believe in nothing. Some people will say, like, I think there's something, but I don't know what to call it. That's what I'm interested in. Like, it's an energy, it's an energy. And if you were just purely living from your brain and your ego, there's just this whole component of your life that you are missing that will help you live a more fulfilling life. And I mean more fulfilling: partnership, family life, business life, creative life, inspiration. And for me, it's really narrowing it down to like the deep breath, slow exhales. I almost don't even use the term meditate, because some people are turned off by that. They're like, I tried it, but I can't make my mind quiet. And it's not even about that. It's just like, bring it back to the breath to calm you and clear your mind and get realigned in your higher consciousness and your inner wisdom, whatever you want to call it, because we're all arguing over what to call it and missing the power of it. Because
Mhm.
when you tap into that higher consciousness and that inner wisdom, that is where every single answer, solution, creativity, inspiration lies. And that's where I believe that inventors, creators, artists, musicians, Adele, that singing voice is coming through her.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
don't know. She just popped in. So that's a great example of
yeah,
that creative force field coming
yeah,
through this human body.
yeah. I'm enjoying, well, I'm enjoying this conversation on so many levels, Libby, but I think one dimension that I'm finding really refreshing is the invitation to talk in this way and to recognize that spirituality, as you just went through, right? Whatever that means for you, however you want to
Mm-hmm.
consider it or not consider it, but whatever that means for you, that it has a place, and it has a place in, even I think, in the business world, in the professional world, whether you choose to, embrace it in a board meeting or start your company meetings or your team meetings, your SKOs with it. Okay, that's an individual choice. But I think in terms of how you conduct yourself and allowing yourself to be influenced and receive that information and incorporate it into the greater fabric of information and data that you use to make decisions, I think is entirely appropriate. And I will say that as a business owner, I have 100% opened myself up to those types of signs and questions
Mm-hmm.
and literally put it out in the ways that you described of, okay, like if this is what I'm meant to do, then like you asked on the subway, give me a sign and be clear about it, and I'll do it. And I remember that happening very clearly during COVID, and we went through this major, major, major shift of the business, and I ended up selling our office space, and it was like a massive, 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 complete transformation of the business. It was very scary at the time. It was just a radical shift, and it was a complete departure from anything I'd ever thought, done, known, expected to do, any of it. And I remembered saying like, okay, like if I'm meant to take this path, if I'm meant to proceed with this vision and this direction that I have for completely reinventing myself, my life, my business, my family, all of it, then somebody will come along and buy this space. And you have to understand that this space was like in the middle of Union Square, San Francisco, in the bottom of COVID. Nobody
Mm.
was going into an office. Like all they were saying was how the entire market was literally bobbing in a sea of square footage and real estate. And there was just an insane amount of excess real estate, right?
Yeah.
And nobody was
Yeah.
going into the office. And I'm like, okay, but if I'm meant to take this direction, then there will be one, all I need is one person will come forward. And
Mm-hmm.
despite the fact that there's literally millions of square feet of excess real estate, somebody will want the one that I have to offer. And lo and behold, like 5 months in, there was not a single knock on the door. And 5 months in to having it on the market, somebody comes knocking and goes, this is the one I want,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And it
Yes.
set the entire complete course of events into action.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
So it's like I think that, and I could go on and on, Libby, but I think that when you allow yourself to just receive, right? And it's so easy to not, it's so easy
Yeah.
to just brush over the signs and be like, oh, whatever. You just found that thing that you found because whatever, like you were rummaging in the basement and you found this thing. Or you found this thing because you needed to find this thing and you asked for this thing to come into your life and then you found it. How
Yes.
easy is that? Right? I've seen that happen so many times. So I think
Oh my God. Can I just say one thing? I love that story so much. And I am sure of it because even just reading about Maven and, reading your website and about the company, I could feel energetically you do business differently. Even work there 5 years, you got a sabbatical. There's things like when you said, like, I want to say, like, you had me at eye contact. The fact that you even have that in your, on your website, like eye contact, a handshake. These are people. These are human beings. You want to find the right person for the right company and the right company for the right person. Like energetically, you can feel it. And that story that you just told, once that happens to you, you can lead your whole life that way because you've already gotten proof that it works. And
Yes.
you know that when something doesn't work that you want to be working, you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to open up to something bigger because clearly something better wants to come to me. And I need to release this in order to let that better thing come in.
Yes.
It's all energy. And you have
Yes.
to start with the thoughts in your head. It has to start there. It's not some like woo woo Instagram thing. It is real. I was just watching this interview with Dr. Doty from Stanford. He wrote the book Mind Magic and talks about the neuroscience of visualizing and create, visualization and creating what you need. And it's fantastic. Anyway, I watched that last night. But if someone needs to understand the neuroscience of what's happening there, read that book, Mind Magic. I haven't even read it myself yet. I just saw the interview with him last night and thought, whoa, this is amazing.
Yeah.
So it's energy. It's all energy. And those people are like, oh, well, no one's hiring. I'll never get a job. Or I want to make, 250 or 300,000 plus bonus. The people that go, oh yeah, that company's out there for me and I'm going to get it. Those are the ones more likely to have some opportunity come to them like that than the ones who are like, well, everyone's saying that's not out there. When people tell me that, I'm like, well, don't listen to them. Because why are you going to clump yourself into that group of people?
Right. So true. Is that what you get from traveling? I mean, I know that leaving Oprah, you went on this massive sojourn of discovery and
Uh-huh.
experience. And I know in us coordinating today's conversation, you were traveling. I think is it okay to say you were in
Yeah.
Brazil? Yeah.
Yes. Pepita's Secretaries Club, the largest secretaries club in South America. Yes. I
Wow.
was one of the
Yeah.
speakers there.
So cool. So is that
Hmm.
is that one of the things that you enjoy about traveling is how it helps kind of open you up and stay open and kind of allow for new pathways of openness to emerge?
Absolutely. I love traveling. And what I love about that is not only going to different cultures and meeting the people, it's the people. It is literally the people. I love human beings. I love human beings. I love people. I love sharing my story and being vulnerable and open and all the things that I wouldn't talk about for years because I thought I had to be perfect, which is just a big farce. It's just that whole perfection thing causes nothing but pain and disappointment. Um, and so I love people and I love listening to their stories and reflecting back to them the best of who they are. That's what I love. And I will say back to what you were just saying, when I took that year off after I left the Oprah uh, thing, I didn't leave Oprah. I left the job with the network.
Yeah.
So I had moved on into this job with Super Soul Sunday on the new network and moved out to LA. And then when I decided, oh, leadership has changed and I'm just not in alignment with these new leaders, it's time for me to go. And then I decided I was going to take a year off. And honestly, that year, Jessica, was me coming back to myself. Who am I if I am not Oprah's chief of staff executive assistant? Like, that's a huge title. And I'm so grateful for it because to this day, it continues to open doors. It's why we're talking right now. I have such respect for that. And I needed to figure out who am I if I'm not associated with Oprah or Rolling Stone or Maury Povich. I mean, I got the Maury Povich job at 25. I left Oprah at 45, that job. So then I was like at 45, well, who am I? And even a partnership, a girlfriend, if I'm not so-and-so's girlfriend, who am I? Like I really had to go on this deep, deep soul searching thing. Who am I? I knew I didn't want to be a chief of staff again. I had no idea what I was going to do professionally after that. And at the end of that year, people were like, well, what are you going to do now? And I said, well, I'm going to do exactly what I did this year. I'm going to connect with people heart to heart and energy to energy. And everyone kind of rolled their eyes like, well, how are you going to make money doing that? And I said, I have no idea, but I love
Mm-hmm.
it so much. I believe the money will come. And
Mm-hmm.
soon after that is when I decided to get my life coaching certification. And then I started life coaching. And then when I moved back to New York, I was in LA and then Seattle and then LA. And then I moved back to New York. I started doing executive coaching, and it kind of became this executive life coaching thing. Um, and that's what I do. And I love it because I understand what it's like to be in a position where my thoughts are blocking me from being my best self, as Oprah would say. You know, I understand whether it's at work or in a relationship or just in general. I understand what it's like to be stuck in limiting beliefs about myself. So much so that at 20 years old, I thought I should just end my life in a car accident because I thought, well, I'm gay and I'll never be able to come out because, no one will accept me as a gay person. I mean, 10 years of telling yourself that from 10 years old to 20. And
Yeah.
thank God I survived that accident at 20. And that is why I do the work that I do today, helping people get back to the truth and essence of who they truly are, these
Mm-hmm.
magnificent beings.
So, biggest pinch me moments. I can imagine there's a million, but when you think back and you reflect on some of the biggest pinch me moments, situations, people that you found yourself in a room with, um, over the course of your time, working with Miss Winfrey, what would those be that you would like to share with us?
Well, the number one and the most obvious is just her, being able to spend time with her. What a privilege. I mean, truly. Just the little moments, whether it was in her office or at home or traveling and just laughing. I mean, she's one of the funniest people I've ever met my whole life, one of the most intelligent, well-read people. So number one was just pinch me moment with her for 11 years. Number two, I would say was a sleepover at Dr. Maya Angelou's house. Um, it was Oprah and Dr. Angelo and myself and my girlfriend at the time. And we were going to North Carolina for something. And Dr. Angelo had made dinner. So it was the four of us sitting in her dining room having dinner, having these extraordinary conversations. And then when we went to bed that night, I was like, can you believe that we are having a
Just having a
sleepover?
slumber party.
You know what I
Okay,
mean?
I'm gonna need some more information. So first
Yeah.
of all, what does she cook?
Yeah. I think it was
And
like
and
chicken
what
and
do you talk
dumplings.
about?
Yeah. I feel like it was chicken dumplings, like collard greens, like just good, great wine and just extraordinary conversation. And then the next morning I got up and I went downstairs and Dr. Angela was sitting at the kitchen table and I just sat down and was talking with her. And I remember her telling me stories about when she drove cross country by herself and someone gave her a CB because it was before cell phones. And so she would like talk with the truckers and they're like, you know, and I don't know, just like little things like that. So it was wild. To this day, I can't even believe it.
Yeah,
Meeting Nelson Mandela, you
yeah.
know,
Hmm.
extraordinary.
What a life you've lived.
I'm it's unbelievable, really.
Really is.
Honestly,
Really
I'm
is.
so grateful. I feel like I won the career lottery, honestly.
Yeah. We had another amazing woman. Maybe you know her, China Clayton. Do you know her?
Oh my God. Yes, I listened to your interview with her.
Yes.
Loved it. And I thought I
Loved.
can't
Yeah.
wait to meet her.
Ah, I think you guys would hit it off like no other. But I think there's something really amazing. And I could be wrong, but I want to say her total tenure working for Michelle Obama was pretty similar to the amount of time that you spent with Oprah. And I think like there's a few of you who've just had this incredible, unprecedented, you know, um, privileged seat, right? And just like what does that mean? Like to be able to exist in in the osmosis of that kind of brilliance and leadership and just all of that, right? And how formative it is. And it's wonderful. Like speaking with you is such a gift and knowing that, you know, you were in all of that and who you are and the person I get to speak with today is this person who's been influenced by all of these incredible things and I don't know it's just amazing it's just amazing.
It's amazing. I still feel that way. I swear to God, talk about pinching, like pinching myself. I I feel so fortunate and blessed. And I learned so much from her, not only her, but just the people in her circle, you know, the people
Mhm.
that I was exposed to by being with her, being with Oprah. Um, and I feel like all of it, my whole life has been an apprenticeship for the next thing. Like very clearly in hindsight, I go, oh, the talk show experience with Mari and the
Mhm.
magazine publishing experience with Jan at Rolling Stone was an apprenticeship so that I could have that experience to go to Oprah, who had a talk show and a magazine. And then that 11 years with her and everything I learned was an apprenticeship to do what I'm doing now in the coaching. And then what I'm doing now in the coaching is an apprenticeship for the next thing. And I have no idea what that is. But because I can look back and see how that has historically driven me into my future, I know that it's coming. And it is my job to keep an open mind and an open heart to what's next and
Mhm.
being patient
And pay
and you know,
attention.
and pay
Absolutely.
attention.
Pay
Yeah.
attention. Be present. And
Yeah.
I would also add, you know, and obviously I don't know you well, Libby, but I think too, like the fact that you struggled with coming to terms with your sexuality. I think
Mm-hmm.
that was also preparation because
Oh,
you had to you had to feel this the deceit of lying to others about yourself. You had to feel the how unbearable that was for you to be in to live an existence that felt fraudulent to you and felt
mm-hmm.
inauthentic. And so that when you met Oprah, you were so like, oh no, I'm about the truth. Like I know what it feels like to skirt the truth, and I know what it feels like to repress who I am. So when Oprah asked you that open door question, what's your life plan? You know, like you were ready for it because you were like, no, I'm not gonna live and cower from who I am and what I stand for. And I think like, would you have had that desire to be as radically truthful as you were if you hadn't known what it felt like to be not yourself? Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So I think that like all of it, like it all serves the end goal. It's all part of
Yes.
it, you know? And that's why like we can't deny our past. We can't deny the stuff that was hard about our past. We can't deny the disappointments. We can't deny the parts of our childhood that sucked, right? Because it's
Yeah.
like it all kind of comes together in some intentional way to inform who we're supposed to be, you know?
Yes, absolutely. And oh God, I everything you said is so on point. I am so grateful for my experience about the whole coming out story. You know, I didn't come out until I was 27 working at the Maury
Mhm.
Povich show.
Mhm.
But all that, it gave me compassion for other people, you know, and, you know, my whole life from birth to 27, even coming out, like there's so many stories there. It gives me compassion for people and empathy for people. And I wouldn't change any of it. Even the stuff that you would consider bad, you know, or negative, it made me who I am today. And I'm still peeling back the layers of like, who am I? Getting to that authentic self. Like when I was in that job, I am so much more myself now than when I was in that job. I mean, honestly. And I do want to add this. I remember within 5 days of working, we were flying somewhere, and Oprah asked me, "What do you want to get from this job? Like, what do you want to?" And I don't remember exactly how she asked, but she was like, "What do you want to learn, or how do you want to grow?" And I remember saying, "I want to find my voice, and I want to have the courage to speak it." And
Mhm.
man, did I have
Did you get that?
opportunities.
Yep.
And it was so uncomfortable. I mean, like
Yeah.
really, because I was speaking my voice in most of those cases, in 3 or 4 cases in 11 years, where it was the opposite of what she believed or thought. But I
Mm.
thought, well, I have to tell, this is my truth. And this is what I believe is in her best interest personally, the business's best interest, and the brand's best interest, but always in that order. Her personally as a
Mm.
person, then the business, then the brand. And if
Mm.
I feel this is what's best, then I have to tell her this, even if she was like, well, you're wrong, da, 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 da. It really helped me to find my voice and have the courage to speak it.
Yeah. Which is a nice kind of segue to one of the my final questions, which is I'm curious, like, and I'm sure it's hard to come up with just three, but like,
Mm-hmm.
if you could, what are the three takeaways or lessons from that experience that you take with you, whether it's on a personal level or a professional level? What are the three things that you continue to utilize today?
Number one, and I always answer with this one, number one is being your most authentic self. The truth and essence of who you truly, truly are is the number one most powerful thing you can do. And she taught me that by me observing her being herself in all situations with all people, whether it was a prime minister or a president or the housekeeping staff in her home, or, let's say, room service in a restaurant, or housekeeping in a restaurant, or a busboy, or a bus girl, or like, and everybody in between. She was always herself with all of those people. She didn't change depending on what room she was in.
Mm.
And her being herself and not pretending like she was someone other than she actually is was so wildly powerful. And that was the best lesson for me, because I was a chameleon. I thought, oh, people can't know I'm gay when I was younger, or I'm a
Mhm.
people pleaser. I have to do this or acquiesce to make that person like me so that I can get value and love. I mean, so I
Mhm.
was always becoming someone, whoever the other person wanted me to be, in order to make their life easier. And that was me being super inauthentic. And I had so little power. The more I became my more authentic, truthful self, the more powerful I became.
Yeah.
Number one, being
Yeah.
your authentic self. And I'm still peeling back the layers at 58 years old. Who am I today? What is the best version of myself? That's number one. Number two, surround yourself with people smarter than you, super knowledgeable, open minded, evolved people. I mean, she surrounds herself with phenomenal people, and that's super powerful.
Mhm.
And again, I'll go back to what I learned from her is going with your gut. Listen, fine tune that inner knowing, that inner wisdom, your higher consciousness, your gut, your intuition. Go with that. Learn how to listen to that. That is your best friend. That's your barometer. That's your compass. That's it. I mean, those
Yeah.
three things. And I will say those are for your personal life and your professional life, period.
Yeah. They certainly integrate. And I think what I'm learning from you is to piggyback on point number three is not just cultivate the inner wisdom, but also seek it out, invite it into
Yes.
your life, and
Yeah.
as you do, because you have full-blown conversations
Oh,
with
yeah.
with your higher power
Oh, yeah.
and your advisors. It's like
Yeah.
you guys are in dialogue, and I think that
Yeah.
there's something that I definitely detect that as a consistent theme in your life and the stories that you've shared with us today. And I think that's a really wonderful thing to remember and to offer to people. And as you said, when we opened up this conversation, you in your meditation, you said, whoever needs to hear this, whatever they need to hear from this conversation, let them hear it and let it
Yes.
be apparent to them. And that could be that someone, is wanting or needing to invite that into their life, and I think you've given a lot of examples of how powerful that can be when you allow that to happen.
Thank you. It is because you and I are so open-hearted right now, and the people listening have their hearts open. And I guarantee you, it's like we set that intention, whatever they need to hear and feel. Thank you for flowing from our heart to their heart. And whatever we need to hear and feel, thank you for flowing from their heart to our heart for the greater good of everyone concerned. And that intention setting, anybody can use in their personal life, professional life, and it will change the day for you. And it changes how you feel and what you give and what you receive.
Yeah.
Thank you so much,
Totally.
Jessica.
Thank you so much, Libby. This has been just amazing. Um, Briefly, for our listeners, I want to make sure that they understand how to connect with you, and also who's a good candidate to work with you. What are the types of issues that you advise on in business and in life coaching? Who makes a good candidate for your practice?
Wow, that's a really good question. I mean, it really is. I think that it's such a good question. No one's ever asked me that. And I don't advertise and I don't market. It's all referrals. It's all
Mhm.
word of mouth.
Mhm.
And I always go, okay, universe, whoever I can best help and they can help me, it's always reciprocal. Let's bring us together. I swear to God, for 11 years, that's how I've gotten all my clients. So, as unusual as that sounds, I would say it's
An
people.
interesting marketing and business development strategy,
Oh
Libby.
yeah, sister. Oh, let me tell you. I also, when I left and took that year, the Libby Moore Gypsy Tour, 365 days of following my heart, I also did the opposite of what everyone said you're supposed to do to just see what would happen. And it was wildly successful for me.
Yeah.
So I really thought, well, I believe in energy and I believe our thoughts help create our life and, neuro pathways and all of that. So whoever I can best help, thank you for sending them my way. And it's always reciprocal. So I believe that it's people who feel like I've lost myself. I know that I have this like inner wisdom and this higher intelligence that I don't feel connected to. That's what my jam is. I mean, that sounds very vague, but that could be a CEO founder, or an executive assistant and everyone in between. Honestly,
Mm-hmm.
we're not that different as human beings. At the core, we're all seeking value and love. And who are we? And getting lost in the chaos and swirl of life. How do we get back to ourself? Love, really, to me,
Mm-hmm.
that's what it is. How do we get back to love within ourselves and live our life from that place?
Yeah. I'm supposed to ask you the question I ask everybody, which
Yes.
who would you support if you could support anybody in the world? And everybody always says
Wow.
Oprah, so you already, you
Wow.
already have that checked. But that is our signature way that we conclude these
Mm.
conversations. If and it could be anybody, deceased, living, doesn't matter.
Wow. Well, what I will say is I know that my supporting days are over.
Yes.
So I know that, but in a support as a sense of a coach or a spiritual companion,
Yes.
I would love to work with Mackenzie Scott because man, is she doing good work. Like I love what she's doing. So that's who popped into my head. Jessica, this has been absolutely amazing. I wish we were having coffee or a glass of wine somewhere right now
Me
because I don't want it
too.
to end.
I know that's how I feel. Chardonnay. I learned
A
that's your drink,
Chardonnay
right?
all day.
Nailed it. Well, I agree. And if you ever are in Arizona, I hope you will contact me. I would
I
love
will.
you in person. Yeah, this has been an absolute honor. Thank you so, so much, Libby. I feel so inspired for so many things. But thank you. I think it was so heartwarming and reassuring to speak with you today. So I appreciate our conversation so, so much.
Thank you. Thank Haley. Thank the audio team who had great patience getting me on here today. And really, thank you so much, Jessica and Maven. I love what you all are doing. And let's keep spreading the love. That's what we need to do right now.
Yeah, Amen.
Thank you.
Reach is brought to you by Maven Recruiting Group, who specializes in placing executive assistants and support staff to the Bay Area's most prominent executives and companies. If you've enjoyed being part of our podcast community and are interested in becoming part of our candidate community, we're currently hiring for roles in San Francisco, Silicon Valley, and Los Angeles. You can visit us at www.mavenrec.com to see some of the roles we're currently working on and to submit your resume.